welcome to Thomsen Chapel. If you haven't been here before, it's the room right off of the nave to the right if you're looking straight on the cathedral. I would say maybe it's about 1/11 of the size of the big space over there in the nave. And we have this wonderful organ here that we use every week for our 8 a.m. Eucharist. The organ itself is called the Marion Camp Oliver Organ. It was donated from Marion Garrison in memory of her mother and in her appreciation of the musical arts here at St. Mark's. It was installed in 2003, and it's Opus 22 from Paul Fritts and Company. He is based out of Tacoma, Washington, just south of here in Seattle, and he did the installation and built everything on this organ from the ground up, and it's a fabulous instrument. So I just wanted to take you through all what is in this instrument. So you might be able to see here, we have two keyboards. We can call this one the positive or the swell, and this one is the great in English. And they have each 56 keys. And then there's also a pedal board down here below, and this has 30 notes. The other thing you might notice is that the keys are slightly smaller than a piano's keys would be, and that's just because of the historical techniques that were used in designing this organ, and it makes for a really fun organ to play. I would say it's similar to a harpsichord if you've ever played an instrument such as that. So, you can see there are these knobs here, and we call these stops, and they, when you pull them out, make different sounds. This one here on the grate is the 8-foot sound, and it's that foundation principal sound that everything is built on in the organ. And so here, let me just play a little bit of what this sounds like to you. It's just a lovely, full, beautiful sound. So 8-foot is sort of like the same pitch that your piano would be in. 4 feet would be an octave above that. And so here you can hear that. Here's the 8-foot, and then an octave above is a 4-foot. And then an octave above that is 2-foot. So you can see by just playing that one note with these 3 stops drawn, I'm actually playing 3 notes at the same time, which is really cool. And then from there you can actually add the mixture and get the full principal chorus. And all a mixture is are several sets of pipes that play at different pitches at the same time. And they're the overtone series, if you've ever heard of that. And so you get this lovely full effect that sort of highlights the foundational pitch, all based on that 8-foot stop that I showed at the beginning. And here's a little bit of what that full principal chorus sounds like here on the Thomsen Chapel organ. On this organ, we have a 16-foot board on, which is like a flute-like stop. And so you can have a 16-foot foundation underneath the 8-foot, so it's an octave below what your piano would play. So it's almost like having your pedals on the keyboard. Here's what that sounds like. It's kind of cool. A really full sound. And so what we would call this is the principal chorus. There are other types of stops on this organ too. We have on the slower manual here a trumpet stop. It's really sprightly. Here's what this sounds like. Even add that to the whole principal chorus that we had on earlier. It just has a nice growling, big sound. It's wonderful. You can use that trumpet stop as a solo. You can use it as a chorus stop as I just played it here. Or you can mix it up with all these other stops. There's many different combinations. Another stop on this particular manual here, the great, we have what is called a cornet, and you can actually pull it out halfway or all the way. And what that does, it activates two different pipes in the keyboard. So if you pull it out halfway, it will play the fifth. So if you here's G, like on the main keyboard, and if you see a fifth below that, there's the G. So you can kind of see it's playing fifths. And if you pull it out again, it plays a fifth and a third, which these are all parts of the overtone series, but you can kind of hear it when you play low. Listen. So it would be playing the G and the E, so C, G, E, all in that one key. But when you put it together with some other stops, it forms what we would call like a cornet sound, which is similar to the instrument itself, and that's what it's supposed to emulate. And here's what that sounds like. It's just a lovely sound as well. So there's a lot of possibilities just on this one keyboard. So beyond the great keyboard, we have the Swell keyboard on top, and one of the stops from the great actually is shared with the Swell. It's the 8-foot flute stop. So it's the same here as it is here. And you can hear when I press the C on the main keyboard and I press it on the Swell, nothing happens because it's exactly the same stop. So aside from that, all the stops on the Swell division are the independent. So we have the 8-foot flute sound. And then we have a 4-foot flute sound. So again, that's an octave above what your piano would play at home. And we can add a 2-foot flute, which is another octave above that. Also on this manual, we have some string type instruments. One of them is called a gamba, which it's, again, trying to emulate that gamba sound that you might have heard from a historical instrument. So here's a little bit of what that sounds like. I think that this stop is indeed the quietest stop on the organ. When you combine it with the celeste, which is another string type instrument, it almost sounds like strings are playing or violins of some sort. Here's a little bit of what that sounds like. Very lovely sound. Let me show you something else about this too. So if I play just the gamba by itself, here I'm going to play just a G. You can hear the tone I mean. Now if I add the celeste stop is purposefully tuned slightly sharp, and so that's what gives it that sort of string-like quality. So you can, if you listen closely enough, you can hear beating, which is where it's slightly out of tune with the gamba. So first, here's the gamba again by itself. And now I'm going to add the celeste. Let's see if we can hear the beating. You can just kind of hear it go la, 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 la. Like that's kind of the different tuning. So it's just slightly off, but that's, again, what gives it that string-like quality. It's really wonderful. There's one other stop on this division, and it's called the Dulcian stop. It sounds to me like a type of a clarinet. It could also be called a chrome horn and some other types of instruments. But it's a lovely, quieter reed sound from that of the main manual here. Here's what that sounds like. So you can sort of have a flute chorus with a little bit of a reed here on this division all by itself, and then there's a whole other chorus, a principal chorus here on the main manual with a reed as well. So you can kind of hear the difference between the two. It's a lot of fun. So with that, there's just a ton of possibilities with repertoire. And the amazing thing to me every day that I get to sit here and have the pleasure of playing this organ for service is just seeing how much there you can do with this organ, how many pipes are fit into this really tiny space. And it's really hard to see on the camera. So I do hope when we're open again that you can come and see for yourself. But it's really maybe, I don't know, 10 feet of space between this rail here to the wall, and that's it. And all the pipes that are playing in these stops are contained from here to the ceiling. And if you look really closely, the pipes go all the way to the top of the ceiling. So it's using every inch of space, and it's just incredible to me. Because of the space limitations, though, the pedal division really is shared stops from the grate. And so I can demonstrate that as well. So we have the 16-foot, the 8-foot, which is, again, that foundational stop that I talked about, and the 4-foot, which is the octave above. And then we also have the 8-foot trumpet from the grate as well. And so all of these stops are shared between the pedal and the grate, but by having separate draw knobs for them, we can still have an independent pedal division, and it allows us to play a bunch of different repertoire here, which is great. And this is my favorite thing to show. So if you pull the trumpet stop out here on the pedal, actually let me do it here. I'll pull it out on the grate, but then if you pull it out on the pedal, watch what happens. Boop, it goes in, and that's just because they're sharing the same stop. The other ones have different action behind the scenes here, and so it allows them to be pulled at the same time these are, which again, it allows for a bit more versatility. One other thing that I wanted to point out about this organ, and you might have already heard it when I've been playing hymn number 496 here in our hymnal 1982, the temperament of this instrument is quite different than what you would have in the piano and what is, what most orchestras use today. And so the standard that you would have your piano tuned is A440 and equal tempered. And so all that is a particular pitch designation, and then there's a mathematical formula that sort of makes all of the spaces between the half steps, which is between each key on the keyboard, it's exactly the same. And so what that does, and that's why it's called equal temperament, because it's equal, it allows you to play in whatever key you want, no matter how many sharps or flats are in the key signature. In earlier times, there were other temperaments, particularly before the 18th century. There was a wide variety of temperaments. And if you look at musics from that time and before, you'll see that a lot of the key signatures maybe have no accidentals. They might have 1 or 2 sharps or flats, but they don't have 5 flats or more. Same thing on the sharp side, and that's just because the temperament at the time wouldn't allow for that. This particular organ is tuned in Kellner, and so it's not equal temperament, but it's not what we would call like a mean tone temperament either. So it's a little bit more mild. You can hear the difference though in the keys. So here's a C major chord, and you'll hear it sounds very pure and in tune and consonant. Now if I play D flat major on the same keyboard, you'll hear a huge difference. Sounds like something's not right, doesn't it? Here's F sharp major again. It's another one of those outlandish keys. I would say that's the one that's the most out of the tune on this organ if you ever play. But then again, if you go back to G major or C major, some ones that don't have a lot of accidentals in the key signature, very in tune. So that's G major, here's D major. Even E major is pretty good sometimes. And F. So it's just very interesting. The temperament is called Kellner, and it's just it's slightly altering of what we would call a mean tone temperament. It's not perfectly equal tempered, as I just demonstrated, but it's not very aggressively mean toned either. So it allows for you to play more repertoire things in different keys. And with that, maybe we should take apart the organ so that you can see a little bit of what the key action looks like inside. So we're going to take the music rack out. So this is where I would put music to play, but it comes out so you can actually see the action behind the keys. It's pretty cool. So let me lift it out very carefully. Oof. And I'm just going to stick it off to the side here 1 second. So you might be thinking, what is all this? Well, these wooden sticks, if you will, are called trackers, and each one of them connects to one of these keys here. And so if you've ever heard someone say, this is a mechanical action organ, this is what they're meaning. There aren't any electronics. There's just wooden parts and other pieces that all are screwed together and make this work. So essentially, this organ could potentially be played without electricity if we had some way to operate the blower that's off to the side here. That's the only real electrical thing on the organ, aside from also the light up here, if you've seen. Everything else is pretty much historical technique in organ building. And so if you look here, when I press down one of these keys, it will move one of these trackers here. And this connects up to a roller board, which then connects to a pallet, and all a pallet is a piece of wood, and it closes a hole. And so when I'm pressing this key here, it essentially is moving all of that mechanism so that the pallet moves, and then air can go into a pipe. And so I'm directly controlling air going into the pipe with this setup here. And let me try to demonstrate this for you. It's a little abstract just talking about it. You can hear how it's kind of like slowly opening. This one has such a shallow pluck that it's really hard to demonstrate. But you can kind of see that when I press that, it's opening the pallet. And you can see that the action here is a little bit busier. So where all this extra stuff is actually connected to the pedal down here. And so when I press the pedals, you'll see that these notes move, and it ends here, and that's because the pedal only goes up to an F, but there's a lot more keys on the keyboard. But you can kind of see when you play on the grate, it's pulling these trackers down. There's another row behind these at the back, and that controls the swell. So when I couple them, you'll see these keys go down, and these trackers go down as well. So there's multiple things moving. And if I'm playing with the pedal coupled to all of this too, you'll see all of those things move all at the same time. So I just thought it's really interesting to point out. So all of this wood is all connected to this key or these pedals, and they control the pipe speech. This organ case is inspired by an organ case from Holland around the year 1500. The organ doesn't exist anymore, but all of the carvings, the pipe design, the colors, all would take inspiration from that particular organ case. You can see that there are these gold-leafed carvings around the pipe. On the left, you'll see a bird's nest with 3 eggs. The 3 eggs represent the Holy Trinity. And off to the side of that, you'll see birds perched on the edge. This was supposed to represent the earth ministries that existed and exists here at St. Mark's Cathedral. If you continue on, you'll see between the next set of pipes an owl head, and that is to represent wisdom, but also it comes from the tradition here at St. Mark's where a sexton hides an owl in the greenery in Advent and Christmas every year. And then all the way on the far side of the organ, there's a musical lion playing an ancient violin-type instrument. That's supposed to represent St. Mark's, but also all of the musical ministries that we have here as well. So to finish out the demo today, I wanted to play a full piece for you. I played this past weekend for the Holy Eucharist on the Flintrap organ, but it really has a different character and sound here on the chapel organ, so I wanted you to hear it here as well. This Preludium in G major, and it's by Dietrich Buxtehude, and what it's going to showcase is on the main manual here, I'm going to use that full principal chorus that I showed earlier, and then on the upper manual here on the Swell, I'll use the flute chorus, and then you'll get to hear what they sound like together, and that reed sound from the grate that I showed earlier is going to actually live in the pedals, so listen for it. It'll be a part of the principal chorus in the feet, and then in the middle section, it will sort of be its own sound by itself, played by the feet as well. So here we go, some Buxtehude.